The global additive manufacturing market is expected to hit over $100 billion by 2032. But here is the wild part. Most businesses that try to adopt 3D printing never see a return on their investment. So what separates the companies that thrive from the ones that fail? That is exactly what we are going to break down today. By the end of this video, you will understand how businesses evaluate the true cost of additive manufacturing, how to know when 3D printing actually makes financial sense, what the supply chain implications really look like, the intellectual property risks nobody talks about, and how companies are building entirely new business models around this technology. Let us get into it. Section 1. The real cost of additive manufacturing. When most people think about the cost of 3D printing, they think about two things: the machine and the material. But that is like saying the cost of running a restaurant is just the stove and the groceries. There is a whole hidden iceberg beneath the surface. The true cost of additive manufacturing breaks down into several categories. First, you have capital costs, the actual printer, which can range from a few $100s for a desktop unit to several million for an industrial metal system. Then you have operational costs, electricity, facility space, maintenance, and machine downtime. After that, you have material costs, which are often higher per kilogram in additive manufacturing than in traditional processes. And finally, you have post-processing costs, which people almost always underestimate. Post-processing can include support removal, surface finishing, heat treatment, and quality inspection. In some industries, post-processing accounts for up to 40% of the total production cost. So when a business is building a cost model, all of these factors have to be on the table. There is also something called the break-even point, the production volume at which additive manufacturing becomes cheaper than a traditional method like injection molding or machining. For low volumes and complex geometries, additive manufacturing often wins. For high volumes of simple parts, traditional manufacturing usually wins. The smart businesses know exactly where that line is. So what does knowing the true cost actually unlock? It unlocks something called total cost of ownership thinking. And that changes everything about how you make decisions. But before we talk about decisions, we need to talk about when 3D printing actually makes business sense. Section 2. When does 3D printing actually make sense? Not every part should be 3D printed. That sounds obvious. But you would be surprised how many companies make the mistake of forcing additive manufacturing into situations where it does not belong. There are a few clear signals that additive manufacturing is the right call. The first is geometric complexity. If a part has internal channels, organic shapes, or features that simply cannot be made any other way, additive manufacturing is not just competitive, it is the only option. Think about the fuel nozzles that GE Aviation prints for jet engines. One printed part replaces 20 individually machined components. The second signal is low production volume. When you need 10 parts, or 50 parts, or even a few hundred, the economics of traditional tooling rarely make sense. There is no mold to amortize, you just print and you are done. The third signal is customization. In the medical device space, companies are printing patient-specific implants tailored to an individual's anatomy. In consumer products, companies are offering personalized goods at scale. Mass customization used to be a contradiction in terms. Additive manufacturing made it a business model. The fourth signal is speed. When a company needs a prototype in 2 days instead of 6 weeks, the cost premium of additive manufacturing becomes irrelevant compared to the value of time saved. Understanding these signals helps businesses avoid the biggest mistake in this space, using the wrong tool for the job. And once you know when to use additive manufacturing, the next question is what it does to your supply chain. Section 3. Supply chain transformation. One of the most profound business implications of additive manufacturing is what it does to supply chains. Traditional manufacturing relies on a global network of suppliers, warehouses, and logistics providers. Raw materials come from one place, parts are made somewhere else, assembled somewhere else again, and then shipped to the customer. Every step adds cost and time and risk. Additive manufacturing introduces the concept of distributed manufacturing. Instead of storing thousands of physical spare parts in a warehouse, a company can store digital files and print parts on demand, wherever they are needed. This is sometimes called the digital warehouse or the digital inventory model. The U.S. military, for example, has explored printing spare parts in the field rather than waiting weeks for a component to be shipped from the other side of the world. The same logic applies to oil platforms, hospitals, and any environment where downtime is catastrophically expensive. This model also reduces the risk of supply chain disruption. If a single supplier fails or a shipping route gets blocked, and we all remember what happened in 2021, companies with additive manufacturing capabilities can respond much faster. But here is the catch. Moving to a distributed model requires a completely different kind of infrastructure: digital file management, quality control at remote sites, and cybersecurity. And that brings us to a risk that most business discussions completely overlook. Section 4. Intellectual property and digital risks. When you manufacture a product, your competitive advantage often lives in the design. That design used to exist as a physical mold or a proprietary manufacturing process. It was hard to copy because copying it required expensive physical infrastructure. In additive manufacturing, your product is a digital file, and digital files can be copied, stolen, modified, or leaked instantly. This is one of the most underappreciated business risks in the entire industry. Companies need to think carefully about how they store and transmit design files. They need to think about who has access, how files are encrypted, and what digital rights management systems are in place. Some companies are embedding unique identifiers directly into printed parts. Think of it like a microscopic fingerprint to help detect counterfeits. There are also legal complexities. When a hospital downloads a file and prints a medical device, who is the manufacturer? The original designer? The hospital? The software company that validated the design? These questions are still being worked out by regulators and legal systems around the world, and companies operating in this space need legal strategies, not just engineering strategies. The intellectual property landscape in additive manufacturing is evolving fast, and the companies that get ahead of it are the ones building new kinds of competitive moats. Which brings us to the final section: how businesses are rethinking their entire model around this technology. Section 5. New business models in additive manufacturing. Additive manufacturing is not just changing how things are made. It is changing who makes them, who sells them, and how value is created. Some companies have moved to a pure service model, offering printing as a service through online platforms. You upload a file, choose your material, and a part shows up at your door. These companies compete on speed, material selection, and quality, not on owning the design. Other companies are becoming IP licensors. They design products, license the files to certified print partners around the world, and collect royalties. They never touch a printer. Their product is the file. Then there are companies using additive manufacturing to enable hyperlocal production. Instead of one giant factory serving the world, imagine a network of small production nodes serving regional markets. Lower shipping costs, faster delivery, and a smaller carbon footprint. And finally, some of the most exciting models are in the subscription space. Companies are exploring selling access to continuously updated design files, essentially giving customers the latest version of a product the same way software companies push updates. The business of additive manufacturing is not just about printing things. It is about rethinking value chains, ownership models, and what it means to manufacture in the first place. So here is what you just learned. The true cost of additive manufacturing goes far beyond materials and machines. There are clear signals that tell you when it makes financial sense. Supply chains are being fundamentally restructured around digital inventory. Intellectual property is one of the biggest and most overlooked risks, and entirely new business models are emerging that did not exist a decade ago. The companies that understand all 5 of these dimensions are the ones that will define manufacturing for the next generation. The ones that only think about the technology itself will get left behind. If this video helped you connect the business dots around additive manufacturing, do me a favor. Hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Subscribe so you do not miss the next video in this series. And drop a comment below with a question you have about the business side of 3D printing. I read every single one, and I use your questions to shape future videos. See you in the next one.